Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be doing my teaching video for my website on Hadrian's Wall. First, I want to intro into the topic with some discussion questions or warm-up questions for the class. Obviously, I don't have a class in front of me right now, but I would propose these questions to the students in the class. Firstly, starting off with, why walls? Why do we use walls? Why do we have walls in a building or as a defensive position? I think it's a good thought-provoking start to the lesson and really just help the students get interested in learning what we're going to learn today. Secondly, and I honestly think a more thought-provoking question, is Lawrence defendable from a Roman attack? I think it's a good question to propose to students in Lawrence, or obviously wherever I would be teaching. I would want to change Lawrence to wherever I'm teaching at. But I think it gets students thinking about their own area and how stuff like this looks like in their own era. So after those two warm-up questions, we move into our actual history. So when talking about the Romans in Britain, they had incursions before they invaded. The first one was led by Julius Caesar in 54 BCE. This incursion didn't actually see the Romans stay in the UK or in the British Isles, specifically Britain, but it did see them exert like a subordinate status to a lot of the tribes in the southern part of the island. The official invasion didn't actually begin until almost 100 years later, in 47 CE. These invasions were led by a couple different emperors, and they didn't reach Scotland until the mid-80 CE, 83 to 85. And from there, they actually defeated a lot of the Highland Scottish tribes in battle, but ended up having to retreat to two different fortification positions, mostly being Hadrian's Wall, as we're talking about today, because they had to reorganize and move troops to other parts of the empire, as the Roman Empire was at the extent of its growth at this point. Construction of the walls began very soon after this withdrawal from the Scottish Highlands. It ended up being two wall positions. Hadrian's Wall is the more famous one and the more well defended, more well filled one. This wall began construction actually before Emperor Hadrian made it to the British Isles, but he was the one who reorganized, and as we talk about in the next slide, he's the one who kind of gave the construction a more direct direction. In the first phase of construction, pre-Emperor Hadrian, they focused more on mile castles, these very small, like 15 to 20 man defensive positions that were placed every mile along the wall. These were easier to communicate to each other, but they were easier to attack and easier to just be overwhelmed in a short amount of time, just because of how small they were and how little amount of people were kept in them. Emperor Hadrian then moved to having forts. Instead of small units spread every mile, he spread larger forts with full units, with full 100, 200, 300 people, and almost small cities within, or small towns within themselves, to be able to sustain themselves and be able to better control the flow of traffic, or the flow of people, because all of these forts also had gates through the wall in between Scotland and the rest of the Roman British Isles. And that's the most of the construction of the wall. It ranged anywhere from 8 to 15 feet tall, depending on where you were and what the terrain was, and there's a lot of intricate construction that went into it, a lot of individual group, like, depending on where they were, that was what got built. So, moving on to the most fun part of this assignment is the group assignment. In groups of 3 to 5, I'd like all the students to research, design, and then be ready to test their own wall using the Lego kits. In these groups of 3 to 5, I'll have them, as listed on the slide, do some more research, either through Google, through our resources at the school, through our own textbooks, and through our own readings that we've done on the subject, to learn more about the wall, get maybe what they're specifically interested in, like if they're specifically interested in how it was built, or more specifics on who built it. I would encourage them to look through that and then incorporate what they learn into their own Lego walls. I have a very small and a lot more quickly built example in front of me, but I would hope for them to make much larger. I'm going to give them 20 to 25 minutes in class to do this before we test them, and I would encourage them to incorporate and make it look like as much like the real Emperor Hadrian's wall as they can. And then at the end of the 20-25 minutes, I would take our Lego catapult system and test the walls, which I'm going to edit into this video. Which I'm going to put into this video in just a second. Alright, so this is an example of the catapult and the small little wall I made. This is an example for the teaching presentation of what I'd hope the students to be able to build and what I would be able to test their walls with. I would hope that their walls are a little bit more creative and well built than mine, but I'm also going to give them more time than I was able to. Alright, and now we're going to move on to the reflection. Our reflection for today is just 2 questions. I'll have them answer it on a piece of paper, or a piece of paper pre-printed assignment sheet, or on their laptops, or whatever devices they're using. I just want them to answer these 2 questions that are hopefully a little bit more thought-provoking and not conversation starters, but more so reflection to what we've learned on the day of how do they think it affected Roman era Britain. And I'm going to ask them to think about the culture, the travel, and the people who this wall, the Romans, and really just like structures like this in general brought to places, but specifically Hadrian's Wall. And then I'm going to point out, and I hope they notice throughout it, that we don't have any pictures of a full wall or a full fort. And I'm going to ask them why they think that large parts of the wall and all of its stones are missing today. I think these are 2 comprehensive reflecting questions and kind of test what they learned during the lesson, but also provoke them to maybe learn a little bit more about it. Alright, thank you. That was my teaching video for today. I have a couple sources on the slide. But that was my teaching video, and thank you very much.